Okay, sorry. Picking up on Bhagavan, part 2. Bhagavati, part 2. All right. So what is a sage who understands what? Creation and dissolution. Now, I guess I know the words creation, dissolution. We can talk, but I don't understand the nature of creation, dissolution, so I don't get the title. It also one who understands the appearance and disappearance of beings. Right, that's an interesting. That's another way of saying creation and destruction, perhaps. But and then one who understands the different, both knowledge and ignorance, wisdom and ignorance. Right, that person or that sage can be called Bhagavan. So it says, right? No, it says so. In a certain sense, only God understands creation and dissolution, and how beings appear and disappear, and the nature of ignorance and knowledge, right? So by saying that a sage has this knowledge, in a certain sense, a sage has attained. When we say a sage of the highest wisdom, the highest experience, is somebody who's attained union with God almost to a point where they know what God knows. So it's a very big claim. The title is not that we say it's not just a Guruji or a sage or a Muni or something like that. Some Siddha or Bhagavan is not a title for everybody. These are for people of the highest type of realizations. The type of realization that really only God knows these things. So if somebody else has this, they have, for all intended purpose, from our perspective, they have God's knowledge, right? So we see whether or not they're literally God, or an incarnation of God, or a manifestation of God like that. Who knows? From our perspective, they have godlike knowledge, godlike realization. So for us, they're as good as we call them God men or something like that sometimes. So Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi, we have the term Bhagavan for him in that style. Bhagavan. So this is so Bhagavan means God as the object of our personal devotion, the personal God who's the object of personal devotion, omni-wonderful, all divine qualities to extreme form. And so we can say, when we say, so there's something, as soon as you start saying, oh, Kali, the goddess Kali, there's a danger. And I know our friend Igor would always say, no, don't call her goddess. She's God. Because because you have the gods and goddesses, or God and goddess, right? Is that's already, these are two types of being. God, in the larger theological term, is just like the supreme reality, right? It's a term for the supreme reality, right? And in a certain sense, it's actually, you have to be careful. I don't want to argue beyond my linguistic understanding, but the way it's used and the way Sri Ramakrishna uses, he just says God when he's talking about Kali. He doesn't usually say God, the God is Kali. He says, oh, God, and then he gives an example about Kali. Because God, the one that everyone thinks is God, Kali is not just a Hindu goddess, right? Or a heavenly being, or an astral being, or a cult, a local cult goddess that we inherited from the tribals in Assam, the mountains of Assam. All these different things you can like that. She's not just that. She's those things too. She has a biography, right? Historical biography of how she manifested. There's ways to describe it, how she's been understood and how she's been worshipped. But Sri Ramakrishna accepted those things, but he definitely took her understanding to another level, right? Swami Bhajanananda in his translation work of the Kathamrita, he's discovered some very revolutionary ideas. Right, there's one thing. It's not. I think it may be in the second or third canto, book, volume, where Dr. Sakar, right? You remember in the gospel, he's a very colorful character, right? And at one point when he mentions the Swami Vivekananda, the young Naran and M and Rakan, a few of the Thakur's attendants were talking to him about the medical treatment of Sri Ramakrishna, and pretty soon they start talking. Whatever they talk, they start talking about Sri Ramakrishna, because he was so overwhelming to them during his final illness. And he said, "Oh yes, Dr. Sakar said he's a Kali Upasak." So that's a classic. I consider myself a Kali. I would define myself. Somebody asked me, "Oh, I'm a Kali Upasak." Is what I'm saying to a sadhu in India. To try me, it means I'm a worshipper of Kali. right? Upasak is I'm a Ram. You could say, oh, I'm a Ram. You could say a Kali Bhakta, but Kali Upasak is very he worships. So that's a very conscious thing. Like we're worshippers of Kali. We know that we do the Kali mantra. We have a special mantra for her. We have a special puja revealed in her scriptures in a particular lineage and tradition of Kali worship. We're Kali worshippers, right? This is a not negative use, but it's a cult of Kali, not the negative use, cult as in a group of people who have a similar focus, right? And so that's a natural thing. One thing you can think about Sri Ramakrishna, oh, he's a Kali devotee. I would say that. I think it's probably too not emphasized enough. We can start. He's a Kali Bhakta. But when he said he's a Kali Upasak, as I understand, oh yes, Thakur is a Kali Upasak. And Swamiji and the group said, no, you're misunderstanding him, right? So he's not a Kali devotee. Of course, he is a Kali devotee, but he's not just somebody who's initiated in the Kali mantra in a lineage of Kali devotees to the worship of the particular deity, to have these particular benefits of the puja like that lineage. He says, and then the line is, he says, he or she or it, she who is worshipped as Krishna by the Vaishnavas, as Shiva by the Shaivites, as Jesus by the Christians, as Allah by the Muslims, as Brahman by the Gyanis. Right? He says, that or she, Sri Ramakrishna worshipped as Kali. Right? So his Kali is the same reality that the Muslims call Allah, the Christians call God or Jesus. Right? Depends on God the Father or God the different persons of the Trinity. Who Vaishnavas call, everybody's idea of the Supreme, that's who he's talking about. So there's some benefit of calling Kali God, not a goddess, right? There's something, right? And so so when you say goddess, when you say goddess, now you're being gender specific, right? God is also, that's our masculine gender term, but it's actually a non-specific. In common use, in philosophical use, it's a non-gender specific. But then you had more specific, a male concept of God is God, a universal concept of God is God, and the female concept of God is goddess. You can say it like that. So same thing, like the title, we have in the Anglican Church and in the Lutheran Church, there's female priests, right? They don't call themselves priestesses because priest is a gendered, it's inclusive term. Right, but there's some traditions there's some value in some traditions, in the more pagan traditions and like that. They're using the word priestess to emphasize that there's a female priest, right? But it's not true to say the word priest is a male term. It's a larger term. So God is a larger term for that. But there is that said, right? I think that Bhagavan is Bhagavan, not just Bhagavati. But there is something, it's also something about saying that she's Bhagavati, right? That term, not to lose the fact that there is a feminine predominance, right? That she's the like Quathlike we have outside, the mother of the gods, right? She's not just the supreme goddess; she's the mother of all conceptions. And when Sri Ramakrishna, when he said that she who the Muslims worship is Allah and Jesus, and the Christians worship as the Father and as Jesus, and the Vaishnavas worship as Vishnu or Krishna, and the Shaivites worship, and like when he said like that, it's not just one amongst many. It's just like different names for the same reality. That's one we can think of it. We often use that. Oh, there's different truth is one. So you call it by different names. It's a slightly different point. Truth is one, and she can be called by many different names, but she is one, and she is known by many names. It's a śuddhā perspective, ultimately, right? The mother reality gives birth to all possible religious conceptions, all possible religious paths, right? So the emphasizing the mother aspect, the supreme, the goddess aspect. Right, the mother, anthropology would say the mother goddess. We don't use that term so much in our literature. We say divine mother, but the mother goddess she is that supreme reality that generates every possibility. Right, that within her womb is all masculine, feminine, and neuter ideas of divinity and manifestation. Right. The mother gives birth to men, female, and everything, and everything else, right? So there is an importance, I think, in not forgetting that she's here, Bhagavati, right? So Bhagavati, What's our time? Okay, we're okay. Bhagavan. So I given a general. So Bhagavan is the personal aspect of God as an object of worship of the devotee. She is Bhagavan, Bhagavati. She is that. I like the word Bhagavati. There was one Swami that we used to know that we haven't seen him in 20 years, so we theoretically still know him. Named Mahadevananda. A very extremely colorful character, but he always referred to Bhagavati. By the grace of Bhagavati, it was always, he'd emphasize, that quality, which I like very much. When I went to how do I bring? We have one of our dear kind of mentors named Harudan Das Baul. He's a disciple of Purnadas Baul. A few people here probably know who Purnadas Baul is and who the Bauls are. The Bauls are a mystical sect in Bengal of minstrels and fakirs, and they're wonderful. And Kali Mandir, although the Bauls aren't into temples, into image worship like this, Kali Mandir is strongly influenced by the Bauls. We have a strong. This could have easily been a Baul ashram, not a Kali temple. It could have gone either way in the early years. Which was extremely influenced by Baul philosophy and Baul literature and Baul oral tradition. So this wonderful musician and guru in the Baul tradition, we're many times in our conversations, almost every conversation, when I'm hanging out with him, he always brings up, God is not Bhagavan. God is Ishvara. We're Bhagavan. So he's using, now every tradition uses the words in their own way, but it's an interesting thing. Right, Ishvara is the one who creates, sustains, destroys, reveals, and conceals. That's God's. That's the divine, right? But Bhagavan has a couple different meanings, right? And so one is it's given in the Shastras. I'll give by the analyzing of the words. Very often, like by this, ba means this, and ram means this, means this. You can get. So I'll give you a classic thing. Bha. Bha, the word, that sound, what's the Jewish community that does this? The Kabbalists do the same thing. They'll analyze a word's meaning by the sounds of its letters, right? So this is Hindus. It's all over Tantra for sure. Tantra loves this technique, right? So Bha, we have the word Bhumi. So Ba means Bhumi means earth, right? Agni, fire, right? Akasha, space. Vayu, wind or air. Na, nir, that means water, right? And so Bhagavan, these letters together means earth, fire, space, air, and water. The 5 elements are there, right? So Bhagavan is, you could say Bhagavan is the one who creates the 5 elements, but usually it's like, no, the 5 elements is Bhagavan, is Bhagavati, this is him, this is her. Right, and we're also beyond that. What are we? Right, this body, this universe, everything is only that. There's another thing aspect that's a little more tantric, and the Bauls bring this up also. Bhagavan has another meaning. Bhag is the female reproductive organ, right? The Bhag is also there, and we have that even in the sannyas tradition. We'll say, this orange cloth we call it. Sometimes we say gera. Or the kavi. There's different words we use, but actually the most in the tradition itself they call it the bagua, right? So this is the color. What's bagua? Bagua. Why is it? This color is a color of the mother goddess. This color it comes from made from mud. This iron, this red dirt, which is gera, that's very high in iron, right? And in the ancient tradition, this is considered like the menstrual fluid of the mother goddess herself, the earth goddess or Parvati, right? And so Bhagwa, it actually says like that. This is called Bhagwa because it comes from the goddess's flow, right? So then Bhag is a female organ, and Vana is a male organ. Right, there's a little more, and so Bhagavan is the union of male and female, which is what gives birth to this universe. So in that sense, what's born of male and female? All of us are born of male and female. So in that sense, we're Bhagavan, not in the sense that we're the controller, we have the 6 qualities and opulence. This is a very specialized definition that the bowels in some of these tantric mystical sects will understand it, right? But there's a subtle thing why it's important. Why I bring this up because most people will never. You don't actually need to know that this is one of the meanings of Bhagavan unless you're studying Bao philosophy or tantric philosophy, and without knowing that you'll be missing some hidden language that's given, right? But it is important why Ma Kali is called Bhagavati here, because there is Bhagavan. Like I said, Bhagavan could be a gendered neutral term, but here it's not gender neutral. Actually, it has a very gendered, very specific meaning, and the term Bhagavati changes its meaning, right? So here, Bhag and Vana as a male organ actually means Lord, has another secondary meaning. So the Lord of the Bhaga, which is a way of man possessing the wife, or we use that language. We're given away in marriage to. We use that language. The father gives away the daughter. It's in a lot of cultures, but it's definitely implied in that language, right? And by saying Bhagavati, it's changing this. It's not the Lord of the Bhaga, the goddess of the she is the Lord of she is the controller of the Bhaga, right? Anyway, this is a Bhagaki Swami. It says actually that Bhaga is Bhagavan is the Lord of Bhaga, but Bhagavati she's supreme and almost she's not possessed, she's not controlled. And this is a very Shakta conception, and this text is extremely Shakta text. So we'll leave it like that. So there is Sri Ramakrishna when he describes Kali as Bhagavan or Ishvara instead of Bhagavati or Ishwari. Right, because he's associating with her as a supreme source, the God, as Bhagavan, as Brahman, as Paramatma, right? But by saying Bhagavati also has a lot of value, I think, to remember. She is Bhagavan. That there's still something, and we had some struggle and nervousness in how do you translate in Sri Ramakrishna's language, right? Like which pronoun do you use? Right. Of course, nowadays we have all kinds of problems with pronouns, right? But what pronoun does Kali use? Kali uses she, right? Right. That's the thing. Even though and so there's a thing in the Katamrita. In Bengali has a quality that there's the doesn't have a gendered first person pronoun, right? So it's he, she, or it is known by context, right? So whenever in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna you see he referring to God, right? That's just because in English you have to choose. In English you have to choose a gender, right? And so God is he matches God rather than she in our normal way of thinking. Except what I just said actually doesn't, because God is not a gendered concept. So you could experiment when you open the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and you read, every time that Sri Ramakrishna says he, just shift it to she, because it doesn't say he in Bengali. It doesn't have the word. It doesn't. We have to assign a word, right? And usually he's sitting on the steps of the Kali temple, right? And then his story, every example, is really amazing. We've tested this every time. Like, what can't be she. It's just so weird to say that now. God. He says Ishvara or Bhagavan, and in language we have to make it match to he. But then examples always like a mother, like a fish is coming to the home. A mother, and he gives an example. Every example is always a mother example, or to illustrate the point, he'll sing with Shama Sangit, a Durga or Kali song to Ma Kali. Very interesting, right? Because we have to, of course, you can put any word you want in there. Right, because you can put he, she, or it as you like, because it's not there. It's only known by context. I think if you think about the context, right, and put she in there, it changes the language, the meaning changes, right? Very interesting. Give it a shot. Yeah, experiment. Just read the Gospel, and whenever it's talking about God, switch to he's, to she's, and the bhava changes, and even sometimes some very specific philosophical, theological points about some of the things we're talking about change, right? You'll miss the point if we gloss it over into good English, right? So that's Bhagavan, Bhagavati. The next name, I think we'll only get one more name. I had planned for 4 more names, but 5 more names, but I'm learning my own foolishness. Anurāgiṇī. I love this name. Anurāgiṇī is name 243. Anurāgiṇī in verse 31. Kali Sahasranāma. What time is it now? We have 10 minutes. Anurag. This is a term, Sri Ramakrishna used this word a lot. A simple definition could be devotion or love, emotion, affection. It could go to it has a wide variety. Once again, by usage, you understand it. Attachment, loyalty, passion. The way Thakur used it, usually when he used it, it would probably the best if you put each one of these words into the sentence. The one that usually makes sense is like passionate devotion, passionate love and longing, right? So that was his term, anurag, and he used this term anurag bhag, right? The tiger or lion? Tiger. Bhag is a tiger, I think, right? But the tiger of emotion, the tiger of passion, right? He says that the way one realizes God until that your devotion becomes like a ferocious, overwhelming power, the power and ferocity of a tiger. When your passion for God becomes like that, and he described within me the anurag bhag would awaken. Like it becomes like he calling out to his model like the roar of a lion or roar of a tiger, right? You can imagine that such the height where his hairs would stand on, and the passionate. So anurag is that divine, passionate love, right? Agurāgiṇī, you could say that she is that devotion. She is itself that passion. Agurāgiṇī, a way of, you have to be a little tricky, but by implication, is she who enjoys that, or she is the object of that. The object of an anurag, of passion, is her, right? But she relishes it. That is she. If the problem is that we're not going to get to the next group of names, but we only mentioned the previous group of names that deal with the śuddhā, deal with Sahasranāma, and her flow back and forth and subtle and the gross. That this is her play is the full play of emotions. And when you from the Muladhara to Sahasranāma, the highest the Nadi Sagara, this name we did last time. This is the height. This is at its height. Anurag bhag is the experience of our emotions. We have emotions and feelings and sentiments and devotion and loyalty and all these things at every step. But at the highest step, it becomes Sri Ramakrishna would describe it as like wanting to swallow the moon. Right, that's that. He says that it's impossible, but I will try. I'll die if I don't do it. It's that type of. It's that level of passion. That's the final. That's what experience, which she experienced or how she manifests at the higher levels of realization. Anurāgiṇī. So we won't do verse 32, but I will mention verse 32 because there's a cap to these topics. These are very beautiful. So that highest reality, who is called Bhagavati, who is śuddhā, and all these other names we mentioned, at the top of the head, at beyond duality, all the things we've mentioned last 2-3 weeks. Other qualities that's going to be described that are now described. Paramananda Rupa, she in the form of supreme or the highest bliss, right? Chidananda Swarupini, her essential nature is consciousness and bliss, right? Sarvanandamayi, right? She's permeated by all bliss, or she's fully permeated by bliss. Sarvananda Swarupini, whose essential nature is this complete, all-pervading bliss. And in the middle of the whole thing, the word nitya is there, hinting that this is being described. The problem is that this whole world is permeated by this, but it isn't. Right, Chidananda is eternal consciousness and bliss, and we see the yogis see the siddhas see this whole world saturated with the divine bliss. yet it's dying, it's temporary, it's limited, right? So the nitya, it's still that when the yogis see the world permeated by this, they're seeing the unchanging and the changing. So it's hinted at that. So anyways, next week, God willing, weather permitting and health permitting, in the next year, not next week, next year, we call it next year, 2020, let's go for it. My grandfather, my auntie told me today that she would always say, many of you are here, very good, but before the new year, many people go to the temple to pray for the new year. He said you can do that if you go to the temple on before the new year to give thanks, right? Because that's the thing, we come this last few days, we give thanks for this last year and all the struggles that came with it, as well as the glories, and of course we pray for the next. And we also pray, everybody here, if we don't see you, that may Ma bless you with prosperity, health, happiness, and may you all thrive in every way. At the feet and the grace of Divine Mother. So any comments or questions? We actually don't really have time, but if there's any pressing thing, I think we should make the transition for Arati. Thank you for your kind attention. And we shall save and close.